this is not going to sound good to you, but Texas has just been like a non-issue to me.
Yeah.
Like, why should I care whatsoever what they're doing?
You know, all these years, even before A&M went to the SEC, A&M was kind of a non-issue for us too. So,
well, baby, you've been on my mind. I think about you all the time. Oh, I want to see your face.
Thank you for sleeping around with Dr. Brandon Matthew.
we're here.
Oh, my God. Oh, whoa.
Fun. Ooh,
good,
delicious. Right?
Man, I can't believe it's 7:30 a.m. This is awesome. On a Monday?
It's bad enough for what time it actually is without you saying that.
Well, this is all recording. So first of all, Dr. Kathy Wilson, everybody.
Dr. Kathy Wilson.
Howdy.
I am so, besides talking about the elephant in the room or the fandalo in the room with the t-shirts that I literally made last night. As you can see, I made Brandon's a little crooked and I wasn't even drinking. I really wasn't. It's so awesome to have you on our podcast. So how did all this happen, right? And what we're going to dive into today is some really cool topics. I know that we're going to talk a little bit about your history with Brandon, which I can't wait to hear about, why you call him your baby. We're going to get into the A&M versus Texas stuff, right? We're definitely going to get into that.
Getting back in there.
No,
Hit
let
you
the
with
rings
my
out.
Aggie.
Okay. And then we're definitely going to get into the COVID times, right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about how sleep and COVID was affected.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, I think so.
And then definitely we're going to talk about insomnia.
Yeah,
Right.
I think those are, a lot of people asking questions about those types of things. So
First of all, the shirts, what do you think?
The
Dr.
shirts
Wilson?
are just completely awesome. I mean, I'm just such a, as you said, I'm a fanalo. And
Yes, you
that's
are.
just hilarious that I drove here from Kerrville today. That took about an hour and 45 minutes. And I was listening to Barry Manilow the whole way, not knowing that these t-shirts were going to be waiting for me.
is that an every time you drive anywhere, it's Barry Manilow?
No,
on the
no.
playlist,
The last
or-
time I drove around Texas, I was listening to Willie Nelson.
There you go.
Okay.
And I was going to see Willie Nelson.
Well,
There you-
okay,
well, if
so
you're
that
going
was-
to see Willie, you got to listen to Willie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and she was coming to see us,
so
and she was listening to Barry Manilow.
Oh,
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. So, Dr. Wilson,
Yes, Dr. Hedgecock.
I love you.
Oh.
How do you become
Oh,
a sleep
that is
doctor?
so nice.
How do you become how long has being a sleep doctor? Because this is
We were
interesting.
talking.
Like,
We were talking about that this morning.
Like,
yeah.
is this something that when you're in medical school, you're like, I want to focus on sleep? When I was in dental school, I didn't even know sleep medicine was a thing.
Right.
So how did you become, or what's the process to become a sleep specialist?
Well, that's four
When-
questions right there.
Yeah,
so you
that's a
can
bunch
take
of
him.
questions.
Yeah, I know.
I'll-
He's
She's
nervous. He gets nervous.
I get
about it.
nervous, but she's an Aggie, so we'll probably do one at a time. Okay. So,
Don't make me come over there.
Oh,
okay.
I'll hit you with my Aggie ring.
Oh, yeah.
Sleep medicine wasn't a thing at all when I was in medical school. In medical school, I got zero information about sleep.
Okay.
When I was a resident, I was doing my residency in internal medicine.
Okay.
And I was on the intensive care unit for a month doing nights, like for a month. Lovely. And one of the pulmonologists and critical care specialists was checking out for the evening. He was like our attending physician at
Okay.
the time. And he said, "Hey, I want you to watch this guy in, room 8 tonight while he's asleep, and then tell me in the morning, what you see." So I had never heard of sleep apnea at all.
Okay. First year residency.
This was my second year.
Second year residency out of medical school.
Yeah. And so I watched that guy, over and over, just stop breathing while he was asleep. And this was back in the day, the monitors were there in the room, but you could print out strips of paper with events on them. And so once I saw what was happening, his heart rate was dropping, his oxygen saturations, in his bloodstream were dropping every time he stopped breathing. And then he would, just, and gasp for air and breathe a few times, and it would happen all over again. So I got the nurse that was on that night to help me. Like, I printed out strips of his heart rate and his oxygen saturations and taped them together. And because, when you're a resident, you have to do those kinds of things to impress your attending
Yeah,
physicians.
Of
right?
course.
So when that guy came in, his name was Dr. Busher. When
Mhm.
Dr. Busher came in the morning, he said, "What'd you see?" I'm like, I couldn't believe my eyes. Here's what was happening. And he said, "That's called sleep apnea."
Wow.
And I'm like, "What's that?" And he's like,
That
You
"Go
saw-
find out."
No,
Go
wow.
find out. So before I left, I went down to the library and read
Again, a
about sleep
library is a
apnea.
building, Handsome Dan, that you go to.
they used to have
before-
books.
right.
They used to have books in
Yeah.
them. It was
Yeah.
like, and
I'm
you had
sorry.
to, they were like
Dewey
arranged-
Decimal.
They were
Dewey Decimal
arranged by the
System.
Dewey
Yeah.
Decimal
Yeah.
System. And,
My
so-
elementary school had Dewey Decimal.
So did mine.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
I got the
I'm
I got the
just-
very end of
I
it,
don't
but
believe that.
but I got
I'm
it.
just
I got
kidding.
it.
So,
So
you-
I found
yep.
that fascinating. And then, so before I finished residency, I did actually a 2-week elective
I was gonna
in
ask.
sleep. I had to go to a different hospital to do it.
Now, what hospital? Can I ask? Where was that at?
I was in Baltimore.
Okay.
And I was doing my training at a hospital called the Union Memorial Hospital.
Okay.
And I went over to like a sister facility that was in the same like hospital brand.
Mhm.
And that one's called Franklin Square. So I went over to
Okay.
the square and did 2 weeks of sleep and was just fascinated by it after that. And so I moved to, I'm from Texas. You can probably tell from
No.
the way I talk. Yeah.
No.
And so was just in Baltimore to do my medical training. So we moved
Right.
back to Texas. When we moved to Kerrville, I started my internal medicine practice.
Okay.
But I let all the other doctors know that I was interested in sleep.
Okay.
And there was no sleep specialty at the time.
Right.
And so, but
In
everyone's
that
happy to
area,
do-
or just
no,
go
at
ahead.
all.
In general, so in
Okay.
medicine, there
Sleep-
was no sleep fellowships, no sleep
Not till
residency.
2007.
Oh
That's
wow,
right.
There was
okay.
no,
Yep.
there was no being
Yep.
board
Yeah.
certified in
Okay.
sleep until 2007.
So this was like 2 years before this all happened. Before they had that.
It was a little more than 2 years before that.
I'm
See,
teasing.
being sweet.
I'm teasing.
I'm
So-
old. I'm old.
Well,
So-
it's interesting because I have shared this story before. My ex-wife got put on a CPAP in 1999, and we started doing the studies in 2005 with Stanford, and so that's where it kind of,
Yeah.
started.
So I had no
Totally.
idea. So 2007
Yeah.
was when sleep became a medical specialty
Yes.
in terms
correct.
of you can be board certified. Prior to that, it was a field, but it was kind of just Wild West. Anybody could do it.
It
or-
was,
Yeah.
it was a field,
Yep.
and there was like right now, the certification comes from the American Board of Medical Specialties, the ABMS.
Okay.
Before that, and I think there still is an American Board of Sleep Medicine,
There
an
is.
ABSM, rather than an ABMS. Like,
Yeah.
very confusing.
Yeah, yeah.
And too many acronyms.
A lot of
in sleep
acronyms
medicine,
there.
by
Yeah.
the way. And so, but that was mostly like PhD psychologists
Right.
and, a few physicians. But in regards to like the more traditional way that you think of as someone becoming a medical specialist in something like a cardiologist or something, and going through all that process, that was first available in 2007. But so then by early 2010, once I passed that, I had been doing internal medicine, and it's not that I didn't really, like being a primary care doctor, but sleep had always been my interest since I saw that guy having
Yeah.
sleep apnea.
Wow.
And so I was already doing a lot of consults for the local doctors there in Kerrville, because no one wants to deal with people's sleep problems.
Right.
Like if you're primary care, you don't have time. And so I have patients referred to me by the other doctors in town, already for sleep consults even before that. So once I got board certified in sleep, I had the opportunity to just start doing sleep medicine full time.
Wow.
And so, it was sad, but I let go of my internal medicine patients. And so since early 2010, I've been doing just sleep.
Just
Wow.
sleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
wow.
And I've heard that too. I've heard, talked to a lot of doctors, cardiologists, people that have done the boards, the old way before they had the residency programs and stuff like that. All of them said the same thing. This is one of the hardest exams they've ever taken.
Yep.
The sleep board exam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
How long
that-
did you study for it?
Gosh, I studied for it for probably a year
Wow.
and did a board review course.
Mhm.
And there was that first time I took it, because then I had to take the recertification since then.
Right.
And so that first time I took it, there was a ton of little very specific neurology
Okay.
on the test. And then so I got recertified in 2019. And there was not really the same amount of neurology on there, but there was a lot of other little
I'm curious because
details.
even going back there, right? So you passed the test. It's 2010. You're almost like a rebel. Like nobody else is doing it. And for people who are watching our podcast, you know, Kerrville is small, but it's in the middle of what we call hill country, right? So
Yeah.
you got your Austin, your San Antonio. Were you the only one kind of pioneering the sleep, or was there other people in other metro areas that you remembered?
The closest doctor that did sleep for a long time is in Bernie. I think he's still there.
Oh, Bernie. Wow.
In Bernie, yeah.
Again, if you're watching our podcast from all over, Bernie.
Bernie's huge suburb of San Antonio.
It is.
Yeah.
In between San
Yep.
Antonio and Kerrville.
Yep.
And
Because I'm thinking
so
there couldn't
he
have been
was-
a handful of people
Yeah.
in all of West Texas
Yeah.
over. Okay.
He was there doing sleep in Bernie, but out in the hill country, there wasn't.
Okay.
And then in Fredericksburg, one of the cardiologists there got board certified in sleep
Mm-hmm.
in, I think it was around 2013
Okay.
that he got board certified in sleep. And then currently there's a busy critical care doctor and pulmonologist who's also board certified in sleep. He's certified in like 4 things.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's certified in sleep, and he lives in Kerrville,
Mhm.
and does sleep,
Well, I
but
would
does
think of-
also pulmonology.
Right, and I would think
sees
in-
ICU patients.
I
and
would
stuff.
think in those areas too, there's VAs in those areas, right? And we know with our veterans that they deal with OSA.
A lot of them. Yeah.
A lot of them do. So were you probably one of the very first that they referred to in that area?
You know,
during
they
that time?
they
Or
do
did
they do the office visits within the VA system.
Yes, ma'am.
But then when they want to order a sleep study, if they ordered that and someone needed to go to San Antonio, I think
Gotcha.
they have a sleep lab at Audie Murphy
Okay.
in San
They
Antonio.
do. Yeah.
The wait list is months long, 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
It's really backed up. And so, but we take those, they give them a voucher
Yeah.
for a sleep study,
Right.
and we take those at
Gotcha.
the sleep lab in Kerrville. And so
Gotcha.
they have their sleep studies with us.
Good.
So what solidified it for you? You know, so you were in your residency,
Okay.
you saw sleep apnea for the first time. You didn't know anything about it because you didn't, and I'm not sure medical students still learn a lot about it.
It's getting better.
Getting better, but you obviously start studying it, doing it, practicing it before you're getting ready for boards. Like, what was like the thing that solidified it for you? That was like, yeah, this is really what I want to do. Like, I want to focus on this.
Because you said there was some not hesitancy. You was like, and I gave up my primary practice,
Yeah.
but I went with this.
I think that just, you know, the more consults I did, like what I really like about sleep as a specialty is like if I'm going to have a, 30-minute office visit with somebody, we get to spend the whole 30 minutes just focusing on their sleep.
Right.
And so I get to spend 30 minutes on maybe 1 or 2 problems. And, when I was doing primary care and I had a 30-minute office visit, I might have to be addressing 6 or 7 or 8 things.
Blood pressure, diabetes,
In the
everything.
office
Comorbidities.
visit, and not really feeling like that, I was able to delve in, deeply. You can't dive too deeply into a problem when you're going to spend,
You're right.
I hate to say literally all the time, but literally spending 2 or 3 minutes
Yeah.
on each problem.
Yeah. So I met Dr. Wilson when I first got into dental sleep medicine.
Brandon, when did you meet Dr. Wilson?
Years ago.
You know what? I looked before I came here today.
Oh,
One
here
year.
we
So
go.
I have emails between the two of us
Uh-oh.
as far back as April 2014.
2014.
Yeah.
That's when it was.
So
That's
he
when it
knew how
was.
to do
Yeah.
emails?
I figured out my emails right around that time. This was before Alyssa. So
That's what I'm saying.
now-
I mean,
now
as
Alyssa
far as
does-
assistant.
I've forgotten how to do all my emails because Alyssa does all my emails now.
I
So
wish I had an email.
this is actually really interesting. So
person.
I'm sorry.
I had just got into sleep medicine
Okay.
and was brand new. had not even, maybe had just taken my first course with Kent Smith in Dallas. It was a very rudimentary introductory course. Great introductory course. Like but it was very basic. Sleep apnea for dentists 101. And it really sparked it for me. And so I immediately start going to all these other courses. But in the meantime, one of the things is like, you got to get back, you got to meet sleep physicians.
Right.
And I don't know any sleep physicians. I'm like, okay, well, one of my patients actually says, we got a sleep doc moving from Curveville. They're going to open up a satellite location here, and they're looking for a dentist. And I'm like, this is like,
that's like meant to be,
meant
right?
to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
right?
The stars aligning.
Yeah. This is the planets, the stars, everything's aligning, because every dentist you talk to, like, this doesn't happen for dentists. Like, dentists are looking for sleep physicians. Sleep physicians are never looking for dentists. Of course, now it happens more, I think, but
it's like it's a lot like Handsome Dan on Tinder.
It's he's always looking, never finding. And so I meet Kathy and we go to lunch. We went to PF Chang's.
We went to PF Chang's.
Yeah, I remember this.
Yes.
We went to PF Chang's, and I was just this little rookie. I'm like, look, I don't know anything from anything, but I'm learning, and I'm excited about this, and I want to make a difference.
Right.
And she's like, well, yeah, let's work together. I'll start sending you some patients, and that's kind of how it started. And
2014.
And I'll tell you a story.
From early 2014. Yeah.
Early 2014. So my first patients came to me from Dr. Wilson, or they came out of my dental practice and maybe went through Dr. Wilson to get tested. But the thing that solidified it for me, and I don't know if I ever even shared this with you, but my second patient came to me from you, and they were getting ready to celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary. And they were going on a cruise for their 25th wedding anniversary. And she comes to me, referred by Dr. Wilson. She says, I tried the CPAP. I can't do it. And I am sleeping in another bedroom from my husband. And for the last 7 years, because my snoring is so bad, it keeps him awake. And I'm worried about going on this cruise and ruining our anniversary trip, because we got to share a bedroom on the cruise ship. And, cruise ships have like the smallest bedrooms in the world. Yeah. And so of course I'm like, oh, we got to help you, so we make an appliance, we get her going. She goes on the cruise. She comes back from the cruise and she's like happy tears, hugging me. She's like, this thing has changed my life, my marriage. This has not only was the cruise amazing, but this has rekindled my marriage. I'm back in bed at home in the bedroom. I'm feeling better. I've got more energy. I'm back at the gym. I've already lost 10 pounds.
Love it.
And that was what solidified it for me. I was like, holy cow, if we can if sleep and treating sleep apnea can have this big of an impact on somebody, we got to do more of this.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what solidified it for me. It was
your second patient.
It was the second patient I saw. And I think it was the first or second patient that Dr. Wilson ever referred to me that solidified it for me. So thank you for that.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. And on behalf of that patient, thank you again. When you improve someone's sleep, we hear those stories all the time, right?
Yeah, all the time.
When people's sleep is improved, their whole life improves. It's
really
and amazing.
I'm so blessed because I've been affected by sleep personally and professionally. So I'm one of those people that saw it actually work, a CPAP work, a surgery work, an oral device work. But now, being able to be part of a community of people that gets to change people's lives. I mean, that's how I look at it. Just to even see the joy in your eyes when he's telling that story of all those years ago, but it's so cool. And I'm a big believer in the sleep doctor, the sleep dentist relationship. And if anybody gets anything out of today's podcast, I just love that I've been fortunate enough to meet both you guys, right? And to have a relationship with both of you. But this is the symmetry that the whole sleep community needs to see.
Yeah.
They need to embrace. Too many times have I been places.
They need to embrace it.
Yeah.
It's really shameful that.
And for what I do for a living, I'm out there a lot, right? And I see this a lot.
Yeah.
And it's so refreshing in pockets of this country, and to have the relationship I have with both of you guys, to see it work so beautiful, because it's about the patient.
Where do you think that stems from, that the friction between the medical community and the dental community in sleep apnea specifically?
I see both sides of it, because, I see physicians that are resistant to working with dentists to get sleep apnea treated. And
Right.
I've seen dentists who like just blow off the physician and say,
Right.
nobody needs a CPAP. I can just treat everyone with sleep
Right.
apnea. And so I see it from both sides. And the the main things that come to my mind is like, first of all, there's enough sleep problems for everyone to be busy. Okay?
100%.
Yeah.
For
100%.
everyone to be busy, and we can
100%.
help so many more people if we'll work together.
Right.
The second thing I can think of in regards to like the physicians that don't want to work with dentists, and dentists who, there are physicians who say the only thing that works is CPAP. And there's dentists who will say, no, nobody needs a CPAP. Everyone can have an oral appliance. I don't know of any medical problem with only one treatment.
Answer. Yeah.
Right. Right.
There's no medical problem with only one possible treatment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So every body is different. Like every person is different. Every airway is different.
Mhm.
Every sleep apnea is different. Every snoring is different. And different people need different solutions to their problems. And some people want both.
Right.
I have plenty of patients who have both a CPAP
Yep.
machine
I do too.
and an oral
Yeah.
appliance.
100%. People who hunt, especially down here in the South,
Yeah.
hunters. I mean, I'm telling you, just the people I know low that have camps or, people out here that hunt a lot, they take their oral device. They don't take their CPAP.
And I think patients do better when they have options.
Yes.
I think patients that have options and can express preference, I always kind of talk to patients. I say, what happens if you have high blood pressure or diabetes and your doctor prescribes you a medication? And you go to the pharmacy, you pick up your medication, you start taking it, and you go back and the medication's not working. Your blood pressure's still high. Does that ever happen? That happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
So what do? Well, we try another solution. We try a different dosage. We try a different medication. We try something else. And I always kind of tell patients, hey, here's a couple of options. We've got CPAP and oral appliance, pros and cons of this, pros and cons of this. Which one do you think you want to try? And if they say, I want to try the CPAP first, I say, that's great. I hope it works for you. And if it does, that's great. But if it doesn't work for you, this is going to be your backup.
Yeah.
Okay?
Come back and let us know.
And I do the reverse. If we do an oral appliance, I say, hey, we're going to try an oral appliance first. That's what you want. I got to tell you, there's a good chance it works, but it might not.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't, CPAP's your backup. And if neither one works for you, well, then we got to start talking about other options. We got to talk about surgery, positional therapy, Inspire, jaw surgery, whatever it is. We go down that road. But I think too many times patients don't get options. They get one solution, like you said.
Yes. And
well, I think coming to the table, right? So it's like you guys have this relationship. I see a future where I really do. I think where the sleep physician and the sleep dentist works hand in hand, closer than ever before. By the time this airs, we'll be 6 months out of a recall with Philips, right? And it's taken a community to work together on this Philips recall.
Yes.
It's even taken, quote unquote, their competitor to work together with ResMed. And so I think it's really put a spotlight in a good way on sleep dentistry. I love it. It's put a spotlight saying, okay, there is another option out there that is viable for that mild to moderate, but also that could hold over until we get this thing figured out. I mean, this recall is serious.
How's that recall affected you? Have you been, or are you seeing it with patients? Or?
I'll say that like in my own practice in Kerrville, I mean, we do provide, CPAP machines and, we're just lucky in that we chose to provide ResMed equipment.
Right.
So,
so I reached out to her right when it all happened. I was like, "Oh, you're good.
You're good."
Yeah.
Not in a bad way.
but it still has because, the letters that Respironic sent out and the letters that the durable medical equipment companies, the ones who provided those Respironic CPAP machines, the letters that they sent out to the patients say, call your doctor and see what you should do.
Right.
So,
everybody's calling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And they want to know, should they continue using their machine, until it gets repaired or replaced, or should they not use it and things like that. And we have to just look at everyone's chart on a call by call basis and, had sort of, we had a team meeting and said, okay, if the patient's sleep apnea was mild to moderate and they're not having any symptoms of being bothered by that Respironics machine that seal can break down.
Right.
And so if they're not having any symptoms, of that, then let's do this. If it's severe and they're not having any symptoms, let's do this. If if it's severe and they are having coughing, headaches, things like that, then here's the plan, and we just so whoever answered the phone could just
had a workflow
start to handle the problem. Yeah.
So let's turn a little bit here and talk about awareness and just the general public and sleep in general. And that, one of the things that, I know Matthew and I are really passionate about is just overall health.
Yeah.
And the impact of sleep on overall health. And I think Americans in general just kind of have neglected. Speaking of health, you all right?
Yeah, I'm just got a little sneezy thing.
Allergies? You need
I think
you need a Zyrtec or something?
Well, I was maybe getting emotional hearing about you guys. How
that
y'all
could have
met.
been it too. Yeah. You need a tissue?
Yeah, I got my bandana.
Okay.
Kathy, is it emotional or ragweed?
Would you like a little side table?
There's one here.
Look at that.
I just want to make sure you. Okay.
That's handsome Dan, everybody. Being a gentleman.
Gentleman.
Thank
That's
you.
an easier reach, and then I can drink my beverage more.
I think that's what he's.
frequently.
Watch out, Dr. Wilson. I think he's trying to get you.
he's angling here.
Sorry, I'm a little stuffy. I have a little something. It's not COVID.
But general health and sleep's impact, and I think, where do you think the general public is on recognizing the importance of sleep?
I think it's better than it used to be, but I just, there's still just a ton of people who just think that sleep is a luxury, instead of a necessity.
Wow, yeah.
Like they see, like if they sleep in and get a total of 7.5 hours, like they say, oh, that was awesome. But that should be the usual.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Not,
yeah.
It's so typical to, Americans have busy lives, jobs, families, you want to do some fun things as well and stay up late and get up early and, blow and go Monday through Friday and then sleep all weekend.
Catch up.
Or sleep in on the weekend.
Yeah.
And that's not what's best.
Yeah.
Obviously. And, when I tell people who, come see me, I'm like, you really need to just talk to yourself like you would a teenager and say, you need to go to bed on time.
That's good advice. Yeah.
And they're resistant, but you can't just sleep.
I'm too busy.
You can't just sleep from midnight to 5:30.
I'll sleep when I'm dead. Yeah. So one of the favorite topics these days, like it or not, is COVID. And, I've read some studies on COVID and immune function and sleep's importance for immune function and things like that. So, there was a study and, some of these studies were COVID specific and some of them weren't. One study I read was, had to do with colds. It had to do with rhinovirus. And what they did was they had a control group, and then they had, which had 8 hours of sleep a night, and they monitor them for like 2 weeks. And then they had another group, which they didn't allow to sleep more than 6 hours a night. And then they lined them up and they went and they took rhinovirus and they shot it in their nose. And then they tracked them to see who contracted the virus. Have you seen this study? Or you ever seen this? Yeah.
I didn't.
To see who got a cold. Yeah, it was a really interesting study. And what they found was the group that had the less sleep, that was restricted to under 6 hours of sleep, was like 3 times more likely to catch the cold. So everybody got exposed to it, but the group with under 6 hours for 2 weeks straight was 3 times more likely to catch the cold. And then they did the same thing with like a hepatitis vaccine, like a Hep A vaccine. And they looked at the antibody production of the vaccine, and the group that slept more had better antibody production from the vaccine. Now that's Hep A and rhinovirus, but I would imagine when we're talking about contracting COVID and things like that would be a similar thing. Is that what you see? Or
I would think so. I mean, any sleep deprivation, the body is not going to function at its most optimal. The immune system is not going to be its most optimal
without rest.
To put up barriers, to keep those diseases from catching hold, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I visited Dr. Wilson's office during the COVID times, and on this kind of theme, I was curious how different offices handled, during, seeing and how our sleep practice. And it was really interesting. I walked in there with Tiff and met you. And I remember talking about the iPads and talking about how you're seeing the patients, but you were ahead of the curve. You were ahead of the curve in virtual medicine.
Yeah, we were doing
So
telemedicine.
I would love for you to talk about this. Is so awesome. I remember I was so fired up when I left you. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
We were already doing telemedicine for 3 or 4 years before COVID.
On it, man.
So that was just, I felt so completely blessed when everything went to telemedicine. Telemedicine just exploded.
Right.
And other people who'd never done it before were scrambling to try to figure out what platform were they going to use, how to use it. Because there's it's computer software. There's a learning curve there, and it's slow. At first it slows you down until it speeds you up. And so we didn't have to do all that. Like we just started doing more of what we already knew how to do. So
and one of the questions I had for you, and it was really cool, and I thought I brought this idea to you, but we'll just talk about it later. But it's so funny because retirement communities, right? And older people like my father wanting to do that virtual, they would rather drive to the office. So remember I said, do y'all have an iPad where they can actually drive to the parking lot and sit and at least, because they were doing that in Houston with my dad, because getting home on his computer and trying to do all that. And y'all were so ahead of the curve, and please don't take this the wrong way, but I'm like, I'm here in Kerrville, and there were light years ahead of people that I just saw in San Antonio and in Dallas. So it was really cool. And what a blessing, like you said, because I don't think you missed a beat, right? Well, besides in-lab stuff, but did you miss?
The in-lab studies went down in frequency, although we never stopped doing them because some people just, like, if you have to, you have to.
Right.
And, it's a medical problem, and medical really treatment can't just stop because this other medical problem appeared.
Well, that's interesting because that was kind of what happened for a lot of people. So I'm glad to hear that that didn't happen for you. But I know a lot of people did stop medical treatment. A lot of labs completely stopped doing studies. And I thought this was like,
pops especially.
When people started finally coming back out of their houses, the hospitals were full of people with out of control heart failure, out of control liver disease, out of control diabetes, because they basically neglected their health for 3 months. They were so scared that they neglected their health for 3 months. And maybe their sleep too during that time. I don't know. So, when we kept going the whole time, in terms of sleep medicine and dental sleep medicine. Now, it was kind of hard to take the impressions through the iPhone. So our telemedicine didn't work as well.
Yeah, because in medical sleep medicine, like different from dental sleep medicine. So like from my point of view for, doing a telemedicine visit, there's way less physical exam.
Right.
If someone was in the office, there's a few things that we would do, but are they crucial for making a diagnosis? Not really.
It's the
we
history.
can go by the history.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So yours is a lot like Dan's dating profile, virtual versus having a relationship. With somebody.
Poor Dan.
Sorry.
We like to give Dan a hard time, but he takes it.
But look at him. He's handsome Dan. He's such a guy. He's good looking. And so I always joke around. That's called my chicken exit when things get serious. But no, I really do want to credit you for a couple things, Dr. Wilson. Meeting you in my new venture for what I do right now, and with mixing with my old life working for Philips, it was cool to see that. Think about it for a second. What have we already covered in this small amount of time? Your relationship with sleep dentistry, making sure that patients are not only covered on CPAP, but they're also covered on an oral appliance / device, but also your technology. Your technology blew me away. And here we are in Texas during COVID. And you're like, and again, people will watch this going, well, we couldn't do anything in our state. I just thought it was really empowering to call on somebody that had the reputation you did, that had the vision you did. And it really uplifted me. And for what I do now in the, sleep world.
Well, Kathy's taught me so much in terms of the business and the telemedicine and the virtual components and utilizing technology in sleep medicine, especially with home testing.
Yes.
Because that's something that we had to kind of learn. And it's so neat to see, and you do a lot of interps. I mean, how many interps do you?
I interpret a lot of sleep studies.
How many?
I asked you that one time and you
yeah.
laughed
How
at
many
me.
a day
You laughed
do you
at me.
interp?
Oh, a day, maybe.
Or a week? What's the average interp a week?
I would say
Hold on.
Mondays and Thursdays are bigger days.
Over under
My over under for her, I'm gonna say
30.
No. I'm gonna say over under for me 60. You going under? You're going under.
I'm gonna go under.
60 a week.
60 a week that's probably about right.
Oh, you love him so
No,
much. Do you see that? You see that?
Well, I know how many she does for me,
Yeah.
so I can just kind of extrapolate
Well, but
from
that's
there.
what
Yeah.
I was hoping. I was like,
And that's a lot. Like,
Yeah.
no, I know.
like
Oh,
the number
no.
the
No.
number I do for you is a lot.
Right.
No,
I know. And I know you do other.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know. Yeah.
And so then
Dang, that's a lot.
obviously like the Kerrville lab, it's a 2-bed lab. And
Yep.
Kerrville's a small town, although our catchment area is maybe
Yeah.
80,000 people.
yeah,
You know, Kerrville's
Fredericksburg,
like
you get-
22,000, but well, Fredericksburg has a sleep lab, actually. But people come to Kerrville for their health care from a lot of places further out west. They come from Junction and Eden and Menard and Lakey and all kinds of places you'd never heard of before. And those are remote areas, truly underserved,
Oh, yeah.
you know, medically underserved areas. Doesn't bother them at all
Yeah,
to get in the
no.
car and
Yeah.
drive for 2 hours to go to the doctor.
That's just what they're used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While they're in town, they go to Walmart and eat Mexican food and go back.
But you know, with this technology and with home testing, we have the
Yep.
ability. We work with physician offices here. One of my companies, Austin Sleep Solutions, and we have other people that work in other cities that we work with, and we've got the ability to. Doctors can order a test. We send them home with a home test. You can use this technology to upload it to the cloud or to the software, and within a day, Kathy's quick. Within a day, maybe 2, at the most 2, we've got an interpreted study from a board certified sleep physician that's looked at the data. And now we have a diagnosis that here back in Austin, 2 hours away, we can sit down and go over with the patient and kind of explain and go through everything that Dr. Wilson recommends. And then we can send them off to get their CPAP or start making their oral appliance or wherever they need to go. And it's a really cool thing to be able to utilize that technology to do that.
Well, and I can remember when that technology started off. So I was with Phillips, right? We already had that little Stardust. And I remember saying, man, this home sleep testing, either it's going to take off or it's not. All these in-lab people, it'll never take, our company line was, it won't take off. And then of course we launched the night one. And so watching the technology, it's been fascinating across all boards, every single company. We'll have people in here that can represent, but you're right. I mean, the home sleep testing is a game changer.
Yeah. But even for as technology has improved, that's what allows me to do that. When back, if you think back 20 years ago, when someone had a sleep study, the doctor who was going to interpret it had to go to the sleep lab and get on the computer that the sleep study was done on and look at all the data there and handwrite a report.
Man.
And that's why it would take a month to, get your results.
Yeah.
And so, then came maybe a remote desktop connection, so that the doctor could connect to the computer
and see,
with a VPN tunnel or with remote desktop connection or something like that. Now, we utilize the lab management software that we do.
Yeah.
We use
Somnoware. Yeah.
And the study just gets automatically, once it's complete, the study just gets uploaded right into Somnoware and goes, first as soon as it's uploaded, it drops into the inbox of the scoring technician. And then once it's scored, it comes to me. And then, once I interpret it and it's finalized, and I just send an email to y'all saying,
it's such a
here are the ones
smooth-
I did today. Boom, boom,
Yeah.
I love it.
It's such a smooth process. And I
Yeah.
think it's good for patients. Because
Absolutely.
I think ultimately, and it always comes back to what's the most convenient way to do this for patients?
No one wants to wait that long
Yeah.
for any test results, but especially, if someone's had a big in-lab sleep study, you don't want to wait a month to find out how that turned out.
And what Brandon has done, and obviously you, Dr. Wilson, is what I'm finding throughout the country. And I'm really trying to be part of that, is what I call that patient pathway. So the stickiness. So a patient doesn't just go see, they go to a clinic and see a doctor and they get, they think, oh, are you snoring at night? Then I need to transfer you over here to this pulmonologist. Then you need to do a sleep lab. Then you get your, and there's just not this stickiness that y'all have, that I love how that pathway
I
keeps
think
that
the
patient.
traditional system has a lot of Swiss cheese holes in it, and patients kind of fall through and get lost in the old system.
Yeah. And before sleep was a specialty, before there was someone who just concentrated on sleep like I do, then, if someone had suspected sleep apnea, maybe they would be sent to a pulmonologist, or maybe they would get sent to an ear, nose, and throat
neurologist too. They used to,
If they had sleepiness, then maybe they went to the neurologist. If they had restless leg syndrome, maybe they went to the neurologist, and then no one wants to treat insomnia, right? No one wanted to treat insomnia because they didn't know what to do. So people with different sleep problems would get sent to 100%. Different specialists.
And just be put on medicines. I lived it. Yeah. With my ex-wife.
So that's a great segue.
There it is.
Because so many of my patients and so many of our viewers have insomnia, or they think they have insomnia.
They think they have insomnia.
Okay. Yeah. And they don't know what to do. They don't know how to treat it. They're getting different things on the internet. Yeah. They're hearing, do this, don't do this. So let's talk about insomnia. What is insomnia? How do you know if you have insomnia, versus if you just think you have insomnia? I'll slow down the questions.
He does it. He does this every time, doesn't he?
Yeah, I just keep.
I can handle. I can multitask
because you're an Aggie, right? See, there she goes. Okay.
So, what is insomnia, and how do you know if you have it?
So, insomnia. I mean, this is by far and away the most common sleep disorder. Okay. Everyone, when they think about sleep disorders, the first thing they think of is sleep apnea. And sleep apnea is very common, but most adults will have to deal with insomnia, at least briefly at some point during their adult life. It's not that common in kids. It does happen. But so, there's pretty actually strict criteria to actually diagnose insomnia.
Okay.
And so there's different ways insomnia can look. It can be difficulty falling asleep, like you get into bed and you just don't fall asleep.
That's onset insomnia.
Onset or initial insomnia. And then there's frequent awakenings during the night. By frequent, I mean 3 or 4 an hour.
Oh, wow.
Or prolonged awakenings in the middle of the night. Awakenings are normal. No one just every single night, falls onto the pillow and just remains unconscious until morning. We all, wake up briefly, we turn over,
have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Just look at the clock.
Hear a noise.
3 more hours, go back to sleep. Normal.
Yeah.
But if they're too frequent, or if you're awake for, 45 minutes at a time or something like that, that's not normal. And then there's early termination of sleep. Someone falls asleep normally and they pretty well stay asleep, but then after 5 hours, they wake up and that's just
can't go back to sleep.
Yeah, that's just it.
So let's talk about onset insomnia, or initial onset insomnia, because I think that's the one most people think about when they think about insomnia. And I think that's what I hear mostly is I get in bed at 10 and I just can't fall asleep. And I lay there till 11, till 12, till 1 o'clock in the morning before I finally fall asleep.
So the true definition of insomnia, something like that has to happen at least 3 times a week.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a
and for it to be chronic insomnia, that has to have lasted for at least 3 months, and there has to be symptoms.
Okay. And what would the symptoms be?
Oh, daytime sleepiness, daytime fatigue, moodiness.
So if I lay in bed every night for 3 hours and don't fall asleep, and it happens 4 times a week, but after I fall asleep, I have the luxury of not having to get up at 5 a.m. and I can sleep 7 hours or 8 hours, and I don't really have symptoms because I still get enough sleep. Is it still considered insomnia?
No, because now what you're describing, if you're sleeping a normal number of hours, and let's just say for adults that's anything between 7 and 8.5 hours. That's kind of that's kind of a normal range. Some people sleep a little less than that. These lucky people that only need, 6 hours of sleep a night.
What percentage of the population is that?
Very small.
Yeah.
Most people need
it's
7.
a bell curve.
7 hours and 15,
Yeah.
somewhere around there to
Okay.
feel well.
So that would not be insomnia.
No, because
No,
now
because
what
I
it's
get
turned into,
But I'm still
now what
wait.
that's turned into is a circadian rhythm disorder.
Okay.
Where you're staying up late and then sleeping late. If you're sleeping a
Okay.
normal number of hours, that's what teenagers do.
I was going to
right?
say, you're
Yeah.
describing my daughter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what teenagers do. If we just left them alone, they would all stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning and
And
then
they'd
sleep
sleep till
until
noon.
1 in the
Yeah.
afternoon.
Right,
Yeah.
Dan? Sorry.
So conversely, is like in Kerrville, we would see this more because, like you said, a retirement community, we have a little bit older population there, and it's not uncommon for me to see like an elderly person, healthy and active, come in and say, "I'm waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't go back to sleep." And when you start asking them questions, they're going to Cracker Barrel at 4 o'clock in the
I was
afternoon
going to say,
for
they
their
go to
evening
bed at
meal.
8.
They go to they go to
Blue
bed
hairs.
at like
Uh-huh.
8 o'clock
Uh-huh.
in the evening.
Yeah,
And
that's perfect,
so that's why, so when you wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning, you've had 8 hours
You've
of
had your
sleep.
time. Yeah.
That's not insomnia.
Okay. So
So-
now let's say it is insomnia. Let's say I'm not getting the full 8 hours because I can't fall asleep and I'm tired every day.
And you have a job, you have
Yeah.
responsibilities
Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
have to be
Family,
at work
kids,
and-
whatever it is.
Yeah.
So those are the people, that are tired all the time and they just can't fall asleep. Why can't they fall asleep? What's going on?
It's almost always, this is gonna sound terrible. It's gonna sound judgmental, and that's not how I mean it. So it's almost always a learned behavior.
Okay.
So, and I don't mean conscious learning, like the person didn't on purpose do this to themselves. I don't mean it that way when I say that. But insomnia, most often someone can kind of identify, like if they go back and see, like, when did this sleeplessness start? There was something happening around that time.
triggered event?
Maybe someone had surgery, or maybe for a woman, maybe it was like their menopausal years,
Okay.
Onset of that, something. And sometimes someone can't, recall that anything in particular was going on, but most of the time,
I would
the
think a life
insomnia
event would
starts
play
for
a
a reason.
triggered.
Yeah,
A
it
life
easily
event
can.
would.
It
Okay.
easily can. For a man, retiring.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that can happen for women retiring as well, but it's really common in men.
Right.
Upon retirement they say, "Oh, I'm not going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning anymore.
Okay.
I don't have to." So they start sleeping later, but they don't start going to bed later to make up for it. So
Got
there's
it.
too much time in the bed.
Got it.
You're going to be awake for some of that time.
Gotcha.
So there's usually some either event or illness or just stress or something that causes the initial sleeplessness. And then what the brain does is just start making bad sleep habits.
Okay.
Okay. So, it's always recommended, like, rather than just lay in bed awake, get up, do some quiet activity, reading or,
Mhm.
Playing solitaire on your computer or whatever, and go back to bed. Like, get up and do something and come back to bed. Don't just lay there awake, because your brain starts to think that it's okay to just
Yeah.
lay in bed awake all night.
Right.
Does the brain start to, for me, when I've dealt with this at small periods of time, it's almost like there's a hyper focus of it. Like the brain
The
starts,
brain is very
like,
irrational in
yeah,
the middle of the night.
like the brain just starts to, like, the more it happens, and then it's like, oh, this is going to happen. It's almost like your brain's tricking you into just thinking it's going to happen, even
Yeah.
if it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And in the middle of the night, what's called catastrophizing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like what bad is going to happen if you don't
Mhm.
sleep?
What's going to happen tomorrow? Now I'm worried
Yeah.
about, if I don't fall asleep tomorrow, this or that,
Yeah. This
So
terrible thing's going to
then
happen.
that-
And usually nothing terrible happens, but like I said, the brain
Yeah.
is irrational in the middle of the night.
Well, and so when the brain gets irrational, then that creates anxiety.
Yes, exactly.
So there's a lot of patients, I think, that come in and they say, I can't fall asleep at night. And they have anxiety about it. Like, even the act of going to bed starts to create anxiety for them,
Yeah.
because they're worried about their ability to fall asleep that night or not. And it's like this pattern that they get into, and it almost turns into this psychosocial type of a thing where psychologically they're psyching themselves out
Yeah.
before they even go to bed. So I don't know, but is that insomnia, or is it anxiety, or is it anxiety induced insomnia, or
Well, so the insomnia may have, initially been a reaction to something else, but as time goes on, it just becomes its own problem.
okay,
So,
So now the reason that the insomnia occurred in the first place may be gone, but now it's just taken on a life of its own
okay,
and just perpetuates itself. And those things that you're describing are what perpetuate it.
okay,
They
But I
didn't
would think-
start it. Maybe that anxiety and that, that getting anxious as you start to go to bed because you're afraid you're not going to be able to sleep. That wasn't initially there, but that's what's perpetuating it.
mm-hmm.
So treatment options, are we talking behavioral with some counseling? Or are we talking medicine? What are some things that someone can do, or viewers, or how do you treat it?
The first line of treatment for insomnia is something that most people have not heard of before.
Okay.
So here's the thing that I hear
It's
of:
not medicine.
it's Ambien. Like that's the
That's
first.
what everyone
See-
thinks
see,
is
he-
the
That's-
first treatment, right?
That's the first
And
thing.
he has a history.
Not personally a history.
He has a personal history of Ambien, and
So
Hanson
the-
Band knows.
Ambien gets a bad rap. We'll talk about that too. But
No,
the,
it
but
treated
the
my
first-
boy here pretty
Yeah,
good.
no,
but
I got
go
a daughter
ahead.
from it.
Yeah.
Got a daughter.
The first line
It's the only
of
time I
treatment.
can get my ex to have sex with me.
Edit that out.
No, we keep it going. Go ahead.
The
Okay.
first line of treatment is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which
Okay.
we're now going to call CBTI, so I don't have to keep saying
Right.
cognitive
And
behavioral
that's my
therapy for
background. So
insomnia.
now we're speaking
Yeah.
my language finally.
Yeah.
Yes.
So CBTI, and
Yeah.
this is it's a structured, rigorous, very well defined program. This is not, when I say that to some people, they're like, "Oh no, you want me to go to a psychologist?" And
Nope.
this is not going, to some Freudian
Mm-mm.
exploration of your childhood to
Nope.
find out what happened in the womb to start this insomnia for
That's
you.
right.
Um,
No, it's awesome.
it's behavioral changes to make that if you make those behavioral changes and stick to them over
Mm-hmm.
time, it will actually, this is the only thing that actually treats the insomnia.
Okay. The
That
only thing.
actually can
Yep.
cure,
It
I'm going to put that
re-triggers.
in quotes,
Yep,
but
yep.
actually cure the insomnia. This is the only thing that's addressing the things that are perpetuating the insomnia.
Okay.
Okay. It says if you're taking medicine, the problem is still there. You're just putting a Band-Aid on it every night.
Okay.
Right. And then in the morning, you're ripping the Band-Aid off. The problem is still there.
Okay. So how long does it take to go through CBTI?
6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks.
is
And you said
most typical.
and you said it's rigorous, meaning there has to be some discipline here.
You have to do it.
Yeah.
The only people that I know who were not successful at improving their sleep with CBTI
Work upon it.
didn't do it.
Didn't do. Okay. So would you say everybody that does it, 100% success?
If you do 100, if you give 100% to CBTI,
It works.
it works. It's very successful.
Yep.
Very successful.
And so what are some of these, what are the components? So, obviously go through the whole 8-week program with me, but what are some of the components of CBTI?
Probably the one that people like the least is probably the most universal, piece of CBTI is a sleep restriction.
Okay.
Okay. Now that sounds like the opposite of what we want to do. Someone will say, I want to sleep more. You're going
Yeah.
to tell me to sleep less?
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to sleep less. And it's for a reason.
Mhm.
Like what a sleep restriction will do is, let's say that someone is sleeping 5 hours a night. We may get them to where they're only in bed for 4 hours a night, but they're in bed at the times that we want them to sleep,
Okay.
not the time that they're maybe currently sleeping. And so 4 hours of sleep is not enough for anybody. Right.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be more and more and more sleepiness building up in the brain. We're going to be developing a sleep deficit, right? The brain is getting more and more sleepy, and we're going to use that to our advantage that when you get into bed, you're going to be someone who starts falling asleep pretty darn quickly
because you're going to be tired more.
you're going to be
because, okay,
sleepy,
I get
and then
it.
you're going to stay asleep until the alarm goes off at whatever time we say. And once someone is, I'm just using these numbers as an example. Like, so once someone is sleeping, pretty well for 4 hours a night, we let them go to bed 15 minutes earlier.
Yep.
And you work back up.
It very gradually move the bedtime up, until someone is sleeping, pretty solidly, 6 hours. And people need to be realistic too. Like if you've had insomnia for 15 years, you're not going to be someone who starts sleeping 8 hours a night, like with no problem. Right?
Yeah. It's going to take time.
Yeah.
What's your experience with CBTI? Have you done CBTI?
Well, yes, I have a teenager.
Okay.
And it's so familiar. No, when I was a therapist back a long time ago, William Glasser created this therapy called reality therapy. Then it became solution focused therapy, and CBT came off of that got put into the context of sleeping. So it's basically saying those who cannot sleep, what are you doing? What patterns are you putting in place to train yourself to sleep? Just like with solution focused therapy, what patterns are you doing? And so I became aware of it. Probably my mother was a diagnostician. And again, I've always been passionate about sleep, and you said it 100%. It's it's cognitive behavioral. So training that, but it reminds me of like when my daughter is like, she's not going to take a nap today so she could sleep tonight. Right.
Yeah.
So it's almost starting that training. So that's how I became aware of it.
Cool.
But it's so funny that you said 100%, because I agree with that theory. If someone is
universal.
Yeah. If you follow the program, it works.
And I do think medicines work. I'm not here to say they don't, but you're right. It's a behavioral thing, and it's trained and it's ingrained, and
it takes time.
Yes.
And Americans don't like that.
There it is.
We want immediate relief,
right?
Yeah.
For our problems.
And that is so cool. I was just
but this is the more permanent solution. You're replacing bad sleep habits with good sleep habits. And then if you maintain, and that's the other thing is like, you don't get to the end of your 8 weeks or whatever of CBTI and then just stop doing it.
Right.
You can't go back to your previous bad habits.
You got to maintain the good habits.
Just maintain good sleep habits and you'll maintain good sleep.
Yep. Otherwise you have a relapse.
I mean, I find that and tell me if I'm wrong about this, because I've just been so hyper focused in sleep in the last 10 years, but do y'all find like there's such a emphasis on sleep now in television, commercials, bedding, different mattresses, different pillows, I feel like we're at an age right now where
I think there's
kind of
way
focus.
more awareness. That's what we were kind of talking about. I think the awareness is growing.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not enough, but it's until most people think of sleep as a necessity, rather than a luxury, then we're not there yet.
One, I think
but all those things raise awareness.
Yeah, and so I think the awareness is there, but I think we still have the things, the society that we live in terms of what's available: Netflix, TVs, internet, and then we have shift work, emergency workers, hospitals, hotels. All these places that are open 24/7, overseas business that causes people to be off, that affects things as well. So let's talk about drugs now.
Sweet. Yes.
Not those
sleep
drugs.
medicine.
Well, we'll talk.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about both. Let's talk about, so everybody thinks Ambien. That's the first thing I thought of when anybody says insomnia. So what's available? What are the pros and cons? Do they work even? Is it like
they
in a
work.
pinch?
They work. They're okay.
Okay.
I don't think they're great.
Okay.
Most medicines aren't great if you think about it.
Sure. Yeah.
So, how many people need more than one blood pressure medicine? Because there's not one that's like great. So they're good. They're okay. They work for sometimes short-term, problems. If something really tragic happens, somebody's spouse passes away and, something like that, and they need to sleep like right now, so they can, make it through that time or something,
Right.
Medicines have their place. But it's important to take a history of what the insomnia looks like, for that particular person, because, if somebody if someone is having like early termination of sleep, Ambien is not going to help them.
Yeah.
You know, you
That's going to help
can't.
them fall asleep, but
It's
not gonna
very
keep 'em
short
asleep.
acting.
Yeah. Okay.
It's very short acting. It only in the bloodstream for like an hour and a half.
Yep.
And therefore lasts, 3 or 4 hours. It's, its duration of action is only 3 or 4 hours. So it's good for someone who has difficulty falling asleep.
Mm-hmm.
But then once they're asleep, they tend to sleep good, the rest of the night. It's not good for, early termination of sleep. You need something longer acting. Or, if someone is waking up early enough, maybe they can take, a small dose of Ambien at like 2:00 in the morning if they're going to be able to sleep until 6 or 7.
What about Xanax? I see that prescribed for sleep.
I don't like, there are medicines like Ambien that were invented as sleep medications.
Mhm.
Right.
And so I'm not too much of a fan of using medicines that were created for other problems to
Okay.
try to treat sleep.
Yeah. What's the other? There's like
Lunestis.
tricyclics are oftentimes, are they used or
Yeah, they're still used. They're not used too much as antidepressants anymore
Yeah,
because they
right.
make everyone sleepy.
yeah.
SSRI or SNRI.
But
So what are the common ones? We got Lunesta,
Lunestis.
Ambien, Rosarum, Sonata.
Sonata is long. Now Rosarum is interesting. It's not a controlled
Right.
drug, and
Mhm.
it works on the melatonin system in a different way than actually taking melatonin. And so Rosarum is interesting, and it has kind of a reputation of not working well, probably because it got packaged up when it first came out. It got packaged up in these 5-day sample packs, and the rep would come to the office and say, "I'm going to leave you these sample packs." And the doctor would hand them out, and the patient would come back and say, "That didn't help me at all."
Yeah.
Well, Rosarum takes 3 to 4 weeks before it has its maximum effectiveness. So if you
okay.
don't tell somebody that in advance
Right.
and go ahead, give them a sample pack, that's fine, but give them a prescription at the same time.
Right.
And say, let's have you come back in a month.
Use it for the full month.
Use it for the
Mhm.
full month, and then let's see how you're doing. And there's other medicines that are, similar, where the optimal reaction to them is not for several weeks. And so most people are fine with that. You just have to tell them.
Yeah. So which one you like the most? I mean, which one do you prefer? And do they help actually stay asleep, or are they affecting the architecture of sleep in terms of, are people still getting the REM sleep and the deep sleep?
Pretty much.
Okay.
I mean, there's a little bit of difference, but
Okay.
it's certainly acceptable, and it's certainly better than no sleep at all.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
they each have
Yeah.
different
So-
side effects too.
Yeah.
Natural sleep is best.
Right.
Yeah.
I think everyone would be in agreement with that.
Yep.
And that's why cognitive behavioral therapy is more preferable, because if you can be getting natural sleep, that's better than medicated sleep. But medicated sleep is better than no sleep at all.
So let's talk supplements and maybe home remedies. So we hear melatonin.
Yeah.
Are you trying to say, does Dr. Wilson give out marijuana?
That's basically what I was asking. Does Kerrville have a dispensary?
Yeah, just ask.
There's no dispensary in Kerrville that I know of. Now,
we have people that smoke marijuana,
right.
THC,
Mhm.
or they do the edibles, and they say that helps them sleep. We have people that drink. They say they sleep better when they drink. We have people that do the melatonin. We have some people that do like the chamomile teas and that kind of stuff too.
Mhm.
So is there any credence to those types of things?
So anything that's over the counter, let's leave alone the marijuana, like and alcohol for a second,
Yeah.
but we'll address those.
Okay.
Anything that's over the counter that's for sleep has not been studied for sleep.
Oh, like
Okay.
Sequel and all that. Okay.
So melatonin, there's no data whatsoever. There's no medical study that we can pull up that shows that if you take some melatonin, that it's going to help you sleep.
Okay.
But we know that the brain makes melatonin
Mhm.
in the evening, late in the evening, and that's what helps us fall asleep and maintain sleep. And so therefore, someone says, well, let's just put some in a bottle and that should help you sleep. It's not that it can't, but you have to take it correctly. Again, melatonin I'm sure that there are people who will say, I take a melatonin when I need one. It helps me sleep. Beautiful.
If it works for you, do it.
If it works for you, that's fine. For most people, it's not great for just adult insomnia on a dose by dose basis like that. So melatonin works best if you take it at the same time of the evening every day.
Okay.
And
Wow,
what it
so
does is help regulate the sleep wake cycle. You want your when the brain is going to like get sleepy and maintain sleep is based on what time that melatonin peak is.
Well, natural melatonin release is based on some sunlight factors as well,
Yes,
right?
the sun coming and going.
Yeah,
There's
we
a lot
talked
of
about that.
Yeah.
there's a lot
Okay.
of factors. So
Yeah.
melatonin is very helpful for circadian rhythm disorders.
Okay.
Like if there's a teenager that's, staying up late and sleeping late, and we want to adjust that. Let's say, that teenager's having a hard time getting up for school.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to shift that to an earlier time. Then we can time melatonin and bright light to help shift the circadian rhythm. And you can do the same thing if someone's going to bed early and falling asleep early. You can use those same two things, but you would give them at different times.
Got it.
Than you would for that teenager. So melatonin works great for that. If someone wants to try it for just regular insomnia, though, it doesn't cause direct sleepiness. It's not like taking an Ambien where 15 minutes later you're like, "Whoa, I'm sleepy."
Yeah.
So
There may be placebo
maybe,
effect though.
Yeah, there may be, and if there is, beautiful. I love
So
that.
you get that placebo effect with that little blue pill too, don't you?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
But so if someone wants to take melatonin, first of all, don't mess around with some 1 or 3 milligram melatonin. You want something you're trying to assist your melatonin peak, so don't mess around with, just a little bit like
dose.
that. You get 5 or 6
Now,
milligrams.
I've heard.
And take it at like 9 p.m. Don't take it at 11 because then your melatonin peak's going to be at 1 o'clock in the morning.
I'm already asleep by 9 p.m.
So then take it by 7 p.m.
Okay.
Remember, he
Yeah,
eats
if you're
at 4
someone who-
p.m.
I'm
Yeah,
one
if
of
you
those
if you
blueberries.
sleep like 9
Yeah.
to 4 or something, then take melatonin at like 7.
Yeah.
Like a couple of hours before bedtime.
Before bedtime.
Yeah.
Now I've heard, and I don't know, so I'm just asking you because you're the expert here. Actually, I'm kind of the expert here too sometimes.
Let's hear it.
Yeah. Women, girls, estrogenic effects with melatonin. Is there a concern with young girls taking melatonin? Because I've kind of heard that or read that or seen that. Is that a concern? Or
I'm not a fan of kids taking medicines at all.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah, Brandon
like if
believes in just
someone's-
giving them straight whiskey.
until
So I agree.
until
Medicine.
the brain is matured, which I'm sure that every young person would want to punch me in the face for saying this, but the brain is not matured until like the early 20s.
Probably mid
Yeah.
20s.
I was
yeah.
hoping.
And
30s.
And so honestly, like before that, I'm not a fan
Yeah. Yeah.
of kids taking medicines. But if we're really like, if we're doing it in the short term with some melatonin to try to shift the
Right.
circadian rhythm,
Okay.
then we might give it for a few months or something. But,
Okay.
there's a lot of changes going on in the body during those
Yeah.
years. And I think those changes should just occur.
So what do we think about weed? And, because there's studies that say it helps with sleep. There's studies that say it hurts sleep. There's studies that say it affects REM. There's studies that, how do you know which study to, or what do you read from the data?
So again, the problem is like, are those blind placebo controlled,
Right.
studies, or are they just observational studies? Like if you really want a good study, you would have, some people not taking any marijuana.
Right.
And then you would have these that are taking it, and you would want to document like what kind it is, because, there's different kinds, and different strains of marijuana have different properties. And some of them are better for sleep than others. Some of them are better for pain than others.
Right.
Like, so there's different things. And honestly, I would try to go to some specialist.
Yeah.
Like Willie Nelson.
Who does that. But that's
Like on the way to Willie Nelson.
that's difficult in Texas because,
Yeah.
It is.
we don't have that much availability.
Right.
So you
So-
don't have a strain that you prefer.
I don't. I'm such a weenie. Like, I'm one of these people who thinks that, it grows on the earth. It's probably not just like completely terrible for you, right?
Right.
But it's illegal here in Texas, and I'm so afraid to be on the headlines of the front page of the
Right.
Kerrville Daily Times,
Right.
that I got busted with marijuana.
Well, and it is legal in some states, but just the properties of it. Will it help sleep? I mean, this isn't the episode where we'll dive into it, but it is curious. I'm curious as well. It's like,
Yeah,
There
we'll bring
are
Willie in. We'll
probably-
bring Willie in for that episode.
There are probably strains that have been grown,
Studied
or that as marijuana becomes more of an industry, there's
Yep.
probably going to be able to be taking this strain has a property that we want, and this strain has a property that we want. Let's blend those
Yep.
together and try to grow a new strain just
Yep.
for this purpose. This one has, good sleep properties, but maybe it
how much
makes-
property you have over there in Kirk? Well, listen, guys, we are getting.
If I could actually
Oh.
add here,
Oh.
there was a bill that's centered around D8, which is kind of like weed light,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah.
And so that was
Texas just nixed it.
It's been legal, and now they're exactly. I don't know exactly where that's fallen.
Yeah.
But that was legal for a certain amount of time, and so I'm curious I don't know if you have any insight for that.
I don't know much about it
Yeah.
other than
I
it's
don't-
been legal because it's not the Delta 9 THC,
Precisely.
which is, so it supposedly doesn't have the same THC properties. And I know CBD is huge, and
Yeah,
CBD
right.
seems to be
It's one off basically.
it's
almost the same
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
But yeah, Texas just nixed it and said it's illegal. Now, where that's going to go, this is so recent that I don't know. But but okay, so we got to close this off. But we
Yes.
got to get real serious and ask one final question
Yes.
before we do this. Texas is coming to the SEC.
Oh my gosh. I thought this was going to be a Barry Manilow question.
And so we're going to reinstill this rivalry. How do you feel about the Aggies and Texas playing each other again?
I'm excited
It's
for it.
it's a good thing, right?
Just when I was at A&M, like there's always been, the rivalry there. But sometime, I guess, after I graduated, there were people who felt at A&M who obviously felt much more strongly
Yeah.
against Texas,
Yeah.
than most people. And so, there was a lot of animosity. Oh, I never want to play them again and stuff like that. I
Right.
like the rivalry.
Right.
I think it's fun. It's just as fun for me to, root against a team I don't like that it is to root for a team I do like.
Right. Like I
Just
said earlier,
just because
competition's
that's
good.
yeah, just
Yeah.
because
Competition's
that's
good.
fun. So for all these years now, since A&M went to the SEC, sorry, this is not going to sound good to you, but Texas has just been like a non-issue to me.
Yeah.
Like, why should I care whatsoever what they're doing?
All these years, even before A&M went to the SEC, A&M was kind of a non-issue for us too. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, hey, I just want to thank you so much.
But this is proof, and I want to say here, first of all, I'm excited. I think it's good for football.
I do too.
Yes.
I think it's good for state. But this is proof. Aggies and Longhorns can work together.
Yes, they can.
Physicians and dentists can work together.
Yes, they can.
And we can take
Why
care of
can't
people.
we all just get
Yeah,
along?
There you go.
Right?
There you
And
go.
on that, Dr. Kathy Wilson, thank you for sleeping around with Dr. Brandon and Matthew. You're the
Cheers.
best.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
No.
When
love
the
it.
sun goes down and the moon is high, we'll be chasing stars to the morning light. Come on, fly with me.